The silence in the Coalition Command Center stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Admiral Kethvar of the Zenthari Navy stared at the holographic display showing the remnants of what had once been humanity's proudest achievement. The UES Endeavour, Earth's first and only supercarrier, lay broken and dark against the cosmic void, drifting through the Kepler Nebula like a metallic ghost. "Confirmed total loss, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Erix, her scaled hands dancing across the sensor controls. "No life signs, no power readings, no communications. The vessel has been adrift for 18 standard months." Kethvar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that would have seemed alien to human observers but conveyed deep satisfaction among his people. The destruction of the Endeavour had been a turning point in the war against the Devourers, those nightmarish creatures from the galactic rim who consumed entire star systems. Without humanity's technological marvel leading the charge, the Coalition's morale had crumbled faster than paper in rain. "The humans were fools to venture so deep into Devourer territory," muttered General Thaxalon from his position near the tactical display. The Karathi's massive frame shook with what passed for laughter among his warrior species. Their arrogance finally caught up with them. The coalition of galactic species had been fighting the Devourers for 3 standard years. What had started as isolated attacks on outer rim colonies had escalated into a full-scale invasion threatening the core worlds. Dozens of species had united under the Coalition banner, bringing their fleets and technologies together in desperate alliance. But it was the humans who had surprised everyone. Earth had only recently joined galactic civilization, barely 2 decades since their first faster-than-light vessel had limped into Centauri Station like a wounded animal. Most species had dismissed them as primitives, another young race that would need centuries to catch up to galactic standards. They were wrong. The UES Endeavour had been humanity's answer to the Devourer threat. At 30 kilometers long and packed with experimental human technology, it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where other species built elegant, efficient vessels, humans had created something that looked like it had been assembled in a junkyard by caffeinated engineers. It bristled with weapons that shouldn't work, armor that defied physics, and systems that made veteran alien engineers weep in frustration. But it had worked. Oh, how it had worked. Captain Sarah Chen had led the Endeavour through 17 major engagements against the Devourers, each victory more impossible than the last. The ship's crew of 12,000 humans had become legends throughout Coalition space. They fought with a ferocity that made even the warrior Karathi step back in respect. They improvised solutions that left Zenthari scientists scrambling to understand the underlying principles. They refused to retreat even when facing overwhelming odds. The Endeavour's fighter wings alone had accounted for the destruction of 6 Devourer hive ships. Its experimental rail cannons could punch through Devourer bio-armor like it was tissue paper. Most impressively, its crew had developed new tactics that turned the tide of battle after battle. Where other species saw hopeless situations, humans saw opportunities. That was 18 months ago. The Endeavour's final mission had been a deep strike into Devourer-controlled territory, attempting to locate and destroy their primary breeding facilities. The mission had been approved despite protests from more cautious Coalition members. Captain Chen had volunteered her ship and crew, stating simply that someone had to take the risk. The last transmission from the Endeavour had been fragmentary, filled with static and the sounds of battle. Devourer fleet, massive beyond a primary target located, initiating, "Tell Earth we..." Then nothing. Silence that had stretched across the void for 18 months. Without the Endeavour spearheading Coalition advances, the war had turned brutal. Devourer forces had pushed deeper into Coalition territory, overwhelming defensive lines that had held for months. The loss of humanity's technological edge and the psychological impact of the Endeavour's destruction had shattered morale across the fleet. Sir, Irix's voice cut through Kethvar's thoughts. We're receiving a priority transmission from the outer sensor net. The Admiral's attention snapped back to the present. Display it. The main holographic projector shimmered to life, showing the edge of Coalition space where automated sensors maintained a lonely vigil. The image was grainy, distorted by the electromagnetic interference that plagued the border regions. But there was something there, something moving through the static. "Enhance resolution," ordered Kethvar. The image cleared marginally, revealing a massive shape emerging from the interstellar void. It was too large to be a standard Coalition vessel, too geometric to be a Devourer bioship. As the sensors struggled to penetrate the interference, more details became visible. "By the Great Dark," whispered General Thaxalon. "What is that thing?" The ship that resolved on their screens was unlike anything in the Coalition database. It was enormous, easily twice the size of the largest known vessels. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals and alloys, as if it had been assembled from the remains of 100 different ships. Massive weapon emplacements jutted from its surface like mechanical tumors. Strange energy signatures radiated from points along its length. "Unknown vessel, this is Coalition Command," Irix transmitted on standard frequencies. "Please identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came immediately, cutting through the static with crystal clarity. The voice was human, female, and carried an accent that was distinctly American English. "Coalition Command, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Endeavor. Permission to approach and dock requested." The command center fell silent. Officers from a dozen different species stared at the display in disbelief. Admiral Kethvar felt his stomach drop as if he were in free fall. "Impossible," he breathed. The Endeavor was destroyed. But there it was, growing larger on their screens as it approached. The ship bore scars that spoke of terrible battles. Sections of its hull had been replaced with materials that gleamed different colors under the sensor lights. Weapon systems of clearly non-human origin had been grafted onto its superstructure. It looked less like a ship and more like a weapon that had evolved in the depths of space. "Captain Chen," Kethvar managed to say into his communicator. "This is Admiral Kethvar. Your ship was listed as destroyed 18 months ago. Explain your status." A pause, then a sound that might have been laughter. "Destroyed? Admiral, we were just getting started. The Endeavor has been busy. We found something out there in the dark, something that changed everything. Request immediate assembly of the Coalition War Council. We have news about the Devourers." "What news?" pressed Kethvar. Another pause, longer this time. When Captain Chen spoke again, her voice carried an edge that made the Admiral's scales itch with unease. "We found their home, Admiral. Their actual home. Not just the breeding facilities or forward bases, but the source. The place where the Devourers come from." The transmission crackled with static before clearing again. "And we brought some friends back with us." As if summoned by her words, more shapes began emerging from the void behind the transformed Endeavor. Ships that defied classification, vessels that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements in ways that hurt to look at. They moved in formation with the human supercarrier, clearly under its command. 12,000 humans went into the dark 18 months ago, Captain Chen's voice continued. 50,000 are coming home. The war is about to change, Admiral. The Devourers thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were wrong. The Endeavor continued its approach to the station, its escort of impossible ships following in perfect formation. In the command center, officers scrambled to make sense of the docking bay that housed the Endeavor had been designed for the largest Coalition vessels, but even so, the transformed supercarrier barely fit. Its new bulk strained the facility's capacity, forcing engineers to extend the docking arms to their maximum reach. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the airlock, waiting for the atmospheric processors to finish their work. Behind her, The corridors of her ship hummed with activity that sounded nothing like the ordered efficiency of 18 months ago. Admiral Kethavar approached with a full honor guard, representatives from every major coalition species flanking him in their ceremonial uniforms. The Zenthari Admiral's 4 eyes took in every detail of the transformed ship's interior visible through the reinforced windows. What he saw made his scaled skin crawl with unease. The walls pulsed with organic veins alongside mechanical conduits. Lighting came from bioluminescent strips that seemed to breathe. The air itself felt different, charged with energies that made his sensitive hearing organs ache. This was not the clean, sterile human vessel that had departed 18 months ago. The airlock cycled open with a sound like a great beast taking breath. Captain Chen stepped through and Kethavar barely suppressed a gasp. She looked human still, but changed in ways that defied immediate understanding. Her uniform was a blend of Earth military fabric and materials that shifted color in the light. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that spoke of modifications beyond normal human enhancement. Most disturbing were her eyes, which held depths that hadn't been there before. "Admiral," she said, extending a hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Thank you for the welcome." Kethavar grasped her hand briefly, noting the unusual warmth of her skin and the strength in her grip that seemed beyond what human physiology should allow. "Captain Chen, the Coalition has many questions about your disappearance and your transformation." "I imagine you do." Chen smiled, but it wasn't entirely a human expression anymore. "Shall we proceed to the briefing? I have much to tell the Council." The walk through the station to the Coalition War Council chambers was tense. Chen's escort consisted of beings that challenged classification. They wore human uniforms but moved with fluid grace that spoke of fundamental changes to their biology. Some displayed obvious modifications: enhanced musculature, extended limbs, sensory organs that tracked movement with predatory precision. Others appeared normal until they turned their heads at angles human necks shouldn't allow, or spoke in harmonic voices that resonated in frequencies beyond human vocal cords. "Captain," General Thaxilon rumbled as they walked, "our sensors detect significant alterations to your ship and crew." "Explain these modifications." Chen glanced at the massive Korathi warrior with amusement. "We learned to adapt, General. The universe beyond Coalition space is stranger and more dangerous than any of us imagined. Survival required flexibility." The War Council chamber was a vast amphitheater designed to accommodate the diverse physiologies of Coalition members. Representatives from 47 species filled the tiered seating, their conversations creating a babble of languages and communication methods. The arrival of Captain Chen and her transformed escort brought immediate silence. Chen took her place at the central podium, her modified crew arranging themselves at strategic points around the chamber. The Admiral noted how they positioned themselves with military precision, but also with the wariness of predators in unknown territory. "Honored representatives," Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. 18 months ago, the UES Endeavor departed on a mission to locate and destroy devourer breeding facilities. We succeeded in that mission and discovered much more. The holographic display activated, showing star charts of the galactic rim where devourer incursions had first been detected. Red markers indicated known attack sites and the few confirmed devourer positions. "The facilities we found were not the source," Chen continued. "They were collection points, staging areas for something far larger. Following devourer communication signals and ship movements, we traced their true origin to a region beyond known space, in what your charts mark as the Void Reaches." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Void Reaches were legendary among spacefaring species, a region where stars were sparse and ancient things were said to dwell in the darkness between galaxies. No expedition had ever returned from those depths. What we found there challenged everything we thought we knew about the Devourers. The display shifted, showing images that made several council members recoil in their seats. Vast structures floating in the void, neither ship nor station, but something that partook of both. Creatures that dwarfed anything seen in Coalition space, beings of such alien geometry that they hurt to look at directly. The Devourers are not the apex predators we believed them to be, Chen said. They are hunters, yes, but they hunt for others. The things that command them from the void reaches are older than our galaxy, entities that view entire star clusters as feeding grounds. Admiral Kethvar felt his blood chill. You're saying the Devourers serve something else? I'm saying the Devourers are tools, Chen replied. Harvesting implements used by entities that exist in dimensions beyond our understanding. The invasion of our galaxy was never intended to conquer territory. It was a harvesting operation, designed to prepare our worlds for consumption by things that make the Devourers look like insects. Delegate Siv Asha of the Aquarian Collective raised a tentacle in question. How do you know this? What evidence supports such claims? Chen's smile grew wider, displaying teeth that seemed sharper than human dentition should allow. Because we made contact with them. We spoke with the entities in the void, negotiated with powers that predate stellar formation. The Endeavor and her crew were given a choice, become part of their harvest or become something else entirely. The chamber erupted in alarmed voices. Representatives demanded explanations, some calling for Chen's immediate detention. Admiral Kethvar raised his hands for silence, his mind racing with the implications. Captain, you're saying you allied with these entities? I'm saying we found a third option, Chen corrected. The entities in the void are ancient, but they are not invincible. They are also not united. What we encountered were rebels, outcasts from their own kind who have been fighting a war across the cosmos for millions of years. They offered us knowledge and power in exchange for assistance in their struggle. What kind of knowledge? Asked General Thaxilon suspiciously. Chen gestured to her transformed crew. The knowledge to survive in hostile environments beyond anything you can imagine. The power to modify ourselves and our technology in ways that transcend species limitations. The ability to turn Devourer biotechnology against itself. The holographic display shifted again, showing footage from the Endeavor's transformed interior. Corridors that seemed to extend beyond physical possibility. Weapon systems that merged human engineering with alien biotechnology, crew members working alongside creatures that defied classification. We spent 18 months learning from entities that have been fighting cosmic horror since before your homeworlds had formed, Chen continued. We discovered that the universe is far stranger and more dangerous than any of us suspected. But we also learned that adaptation is the key to survival. And the cost? Demanded Admiral Kethvar. What did these entities require in return for their knowledge? Chen's expression grew serious. Our assistance in stopping the harvest. The entities that command the Devourers plan to consume this entire galactic cluster, turning its matter and energy into food for creatures from dying dimensions. The rebels want to stop this, but they need allies who can operate in normal space-time. Why should we trust beings from the void? Asked Delegate Morthek of the Silicon Concordium. How do we know this is not elaborate deception? Because, Chen said, I brought proof. She activated her communicator, speaking in a language that seemed to bypass the ear and resonate directly in the listeners' minds. The response came from the Endeavor's transformed systems, a harmonic sound that made reality seem to ripple around its edges. The chamber's main display activated without human input, showing the space around Coalition Command. There, visible through the station's observation ports, ships began materializing from what appeared to be empty space. vessels that combined organic and mechanical elements in ways that challenged comprehension, their hulls pulsing with energies that painted the void in impossible colors. "My crew and I are no longer entirely human," Chen said calmly as panic began to spread through the chamber. "But we remain loyal to Earth and to the Coalition. The beings you see are our new allies, entities that have been fighting the true enemy for longer than life has existed in this galaxy." A sound echoed through the chamber, harmonic voices speaking in unison with words that seemed to carry more meaning than language should allow. Universal translators struggled with the communication, producing fragmentary translations that spoke of ancient wars and cosmic struggles. Chen listened to the alien voices with obvious understanding before turning back to the Council. "They want to demonstrate their commitment to our alliance. The Devourer forces currently attacking the Kepler defense line are about to receive a surprise. The tactical displays showed the distant battle, where Coalition forces had been fighting a losing action against Devourer bioships for weeks. Suddenly, new contacts appeared on the sensors, ships that seemed to fold space around themselves as they moved. The Devourer formation, so confident in their overwhelming numbers, found themselves surrounded by entities that treated their bio-armor and energy weapons as mere inconveniences. The battle was over in minutes. Devourer ships that had resisted Coalition weapons for months were systematically dismantled by forces that fought with technologies beyond current understanding, not destroyed, but taken apart at the molecular level and rebuilt into something entirely different. "The harvest has begun ahead of schedule," Chen announced, as the Council watched in stunned silence. "The entities commanding the Devourers have decided the assault fleet that assembled at the edge of Coalition space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Ships from 47 species formed the massive armada, their hulls gleaming with new modifications based on technology shared by the Void entities. But at the heart of the formation, the transformed Endeavor served as flagship for an operation that would determine the fate of not just their galaxy, but reality itself." Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her modified ship, watching as the final preparations concluded. Around her, the crew worked with efficiency that transcended their original human limitations. 18 months in the void had changed them all. But they retained the core of what made them human: adaptability, determination, and an absolute refusal to surrender. "Fleet status report," she commanded, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's biomechanical systems. Commander Rodriguez, once her executive officer and now something that bridged human and alien physiology, consulted displays that shifted between mechanical readouts and organic growth patterns. "All Coalition vessels report ready. Void entity ships are in position. The portal generators are online and stable." Chen nodded, her enhanced perception tracking the massive energies building throughout the fleet. The portal generators were gifts from their new allies, devices that could pierce the barriers between dimensions and open pathways to regions of space that normal physics couldn't reach. The destination was the primary harvesting facility, a structure so vast it existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions where the ancient entities dwelt. Admiral Kethvar's face appeared on the communication screen, transmitted from the Coalition command ship. The Zenthari officer had adapted to the new reality with remarkable flexibility, coordinating between species that had spent centuries viewing each other with suspicion and aliens from beyond known space. "Captain Chen, all Coalition forces report ready for jump," he said. "Are you certain about the intelligence regarding the facility's defenses?" "As certain as we can be, Admiral," Chen replied. "The Void rebels provided detailed reconnaissance, but we must assume the harvesting entities have prepared for our arrival." "This won't be a conventional battle." That was an understatement of galactic proportions. The enemy they were about to face existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. commanded creatures that could alter reality through will alone, and possessed weapons that could unravel the fundamental forces holding matter together. The only reason the attack was even possible was that the rebels had taught them to fight on their enemies' terms. "Portal coordinates locked," announced Lieutenant Kim from the navigation station. She had undergone one of the more dramatic transformations, her consciousness now distributed across multiple quantum states that allowed her to navigate dimensional barriers. "All ships confirm synchronized jump calculations." Chen took a deep breath, feeling the alien modifications to her respiratory system process not just oxygen, but energies that existed in higher dimensions. The next few hours would determine whether their galaxy survived or became raw material for entities older than stars. "All ships, this is Captain Chen," she broadcast to the assembled fleet. "Today we strike at an enemy that has consumed galaxies across the cosmos. They believe themselves beyond challenge, beyond consequence. They're about to learn why that's a mistake." She paused, looking out at the armada that represented the combined might of coalition space, enhanced with technology from dimensions beyond imagination. 18 months ago, the Endeavor was lost in the dark beyond known space. We discovered that sometimes you have to become something new to protect what you love. Today, we show the entities that would harvest our worlds what humanity learned in the void. Adaptation is evolution, and evolution is survival. The portal generators reached critical energy levels, tearing holes in the fabric of space-time itself. Through the rifts, glimpses of the destination became visible. A structure that hurt to perceive directly, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions and defying every law of physics the Coalition had ever discovered. "All ships, execute jump." Reality twisted around the fleet as they plunged through dimensional barriers. The sensation was indescribable, like being turned inside out while falling through eternity. Ships designed for normal space-time strained against forces that challenged their very existence. But the modifications held. Alien technologies protecting Coalition vessels as they crossed into regions where physics operated by entirely different rules. They emerged in a space that wasn't entirely space, surrounding a structure that wasn't entirely there. The harvesting facility stretched across light years, its impossible architecture incorporating matter from consumed galaxies. Devourer bioships swarmed around it like antibodies, but they were dwarfed by the facility itself and by the entities that moved within its depths. "Contact," reported Commander Rodriguez. "Detecting massive energy signatures throughout the facility. The entities are aware of our presence." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously opened fire on the Coalition fleet. Energy beams that could alter the fundamental constants of physics swept through their formation. Several ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but edited out of reality entirely. But the fleet had expected this. Void entity vessels, their hulls shifting through dimensions to avoid attacks, returned fire with weapons that could wound concepts themselves. Coalition ships, protected by technology that made them partially unreal, pressed forward through a barrage that would have annihilated them months earlier. "Primary target acquired," announced Lieutenant Kim, her distributed consciousness tracking the facility's most critical systems. "The dimensional anchor is located in the facility's core, 3 light minutes from our current position." The dimensional anchor was what allowed the harvesting facility to exist partially in normal space. Destroying it would banish the structure back to the void dimensions, but reaching it meant fighting through defenses that challenged comprehension. "All squadrons, commence attack run," Chen ordered. "Remember, we're not just fighting for our galaxy anymore. We're fighting for the concept of free will itself." The battle that followed defied description in conventional terms. Ships maneuvered through space that folded and twisted around them. Weapons fired bullets made of crystallized time and energy beams that could age their targets to dust in seconds. Devourer bioships found themselves being converted into allies mid-battle as void entity technology rewrote their genetic programming. Chen watched from the Endeavor's bridge as Coalition fighters engaged creatures that existed in mathematical spaces beyond 3 dimensions. Human pilots, their consciousness expanded to perceive multiple realities simultaneously, flew attack patterns that traced geometric shapes in hyperspace. They were no longer entirely human, but they fought with human determination and human refusal to accept defeat. "Breakthrough!" Commander Rodriguez shouted over the chaos. "Squadron 7 has cleared a path to the facility's core. The dimensional anchor is exposed." On the main display, Chen could see the target, a device that looked like a crystalline flower blooming across multiple dimensions. It pulsed with energies that held the massive facility in place, allowing the ancient entities to extend their influence into normal space-time. "Endeavor to all units form up for final assault," she commanded. "We get one shot at this." The surviving Coalition ships converged on the dimensional anchor, their weapons charging with energies borrowed from the void entities. But the ancient beings commanding the facility weren't passive observers. Reality around the anchor began to twist and change, space-time itself becoming a weapon against the attackers. "Captain!" Lieutenant Kim called out, her voice strained by the effort of processing multidimensional navigation data. "The entities are trying to close the dimensional pathways. If we don't destroy the anchor in the next few minutes, we'll be trapped here." Chen felt the modified combat systems throughout her body come online, her consciousness expanding to interface directly with the Endeavor's hybrid weapons. "All ships, concentrate fire on my target lock. Everything we have, everything we've become, focused on that anchor." The combined firepower of the Coalition fleet, enhanced with void entity technology and guided by human tactical innovation, converged on the dimensional anchor. Energy beams that could cut through the barriers between universes struck the crystalline structure. Weapons that fired compressed space-time punched holes in its geometric latte work. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then cracks appeared in the anchor's surface, spreading with light speed across its multidimensional structure. The facility shuddered as its connection to normal space began to fail. The ancient entities commanding the harvest made their displeasure known. Reality screamed around the Coalition fleet as beings older than galaxies focused their attention on the attackers. Ships began aging decades in seconds. Others found themselves scattered across multiple dimensions. The very concepts that allowed matter to exist came under assault. But humanity had learned something in the void that even the ancient entities hadn't expected. They had learned to let go of what they were in order to become what they needed to be. The crew of the Endeavor, transformed beyond recognition but still human at their core, channeled that lesson into one final effort. "For Earth!" Chen shouted, her voice carrying across all frequencies and dimensions. "For the Coalition! For everyone who chooses to exist!" The dimensional anchor shattered like crystal struck by lightning. The harvesting facility, deprived of its connection to normal space, began collapsing into itself across multiple dimensions. The ancient entities, caught off guard by the sudden severance, found themselves being dragged back into the void dimensions whether they wanted to go or not. Space-time reasserted its normal rules with explosive force. The Coalition fleet found themselves back in normal space, battered but victorious, watching as the last remnants of the harvesting facility disappeared into dimensional rifts that sealed themselves behind it. "Fleet status report," Chen called out, her enhanced senses already cataloging the damage to her ships. 70% of Coalition vessels survived the engagement, Admiral Kethvar reported from his command ship. Devourer forces throughout the galaxy have ceased all activities. It appears that severing the connection to the harvesting facility has broken their command structure. Chen nodded, feeling exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness. The modifications that had allowed her and her crew to survive in the void came with costs that were only now becoming apparent. But they had succeeded. The galaxy was safe from harvest, at least for now. "Captain," Commander Rodriguez said quietly, "the void entities are requesting communication." The main display activated, showing representatives of the rebel entities that had made the victory possible. They spoke in harmonies that bypassed language, conveying concepts directly to consciousness. Chen listened to their message and smiled with teeth that were no longer entirely human. "They're offering us a choice," she announced to her bridge crew. "We can return to Earth, try to find ways to reverse our modifications and become human again, or we can join them in fighting the ancient entities across the cosmos, protecting other galaxies from harvest." The crew exchanged glances, communication passing between them on frequencies beyond normal hearing. They had started as humans, been transformed into something new, and now faced the choice of what to become next. "What do you think, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Kim. Chen looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth and the civilization they had saved. Then she thought of all the other civilizations throughout the cosmos that faced the same threat from entities that treated entire galaxies as feeding grounds. "I think," she said slowly, "that 18 months ago we learned adaptation is the key to survival. Today we learned that sometimes protecting what you love means becoming something you never imagined." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. The UES Endeavor and her crew volunteer for extended operations with our new allies. Earth and the Coalition are safe, but there are other galaxies, other civilizations that need protection from the harvest." Responses came from across the fleet. Not all chose to continue the mission, but enough did. Ships that had started the day as vessels of known species ended it as something entirely new, crewed by beings who remembered their origins but had transcended their limitations. The Endeavor led the volunteer fleet toward the dimensional rifts that would take them to battlegrounds across the cosmos. Behind them, Coalition Space began the long process of rebuilding and recovery. Ahead of them lay challenges that would require everything they had learned about adaptation and survival. Captain Sarah Chen, no longer entirely human but still guided by human values, smiled as her ship disappeared into the spaces between dimensions. The galaxy was safe. The universe was still full of wonders to protect and entities to stop. And humanity, in all its transformed glory, was still refusing to surrender. "Oh, accelerate their timeline. Our new allies estimate 3 months before the main assault begins." Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical displays showing the complete annihilation of Devourer forces that had seemed invincible. "Captain, what are you proposing?" Chen's modified eyes reflected lights that hadn't been there 18 months ago. "I'm proposing we stop playing defense. The Endeavor returned with more than just alliance and knowledge. We returned with the location of every Devourer staging area, every communication relay, every supply line. More importantly, we know where the entities in the void are planning to establish their primary harvesting facility." She paused, letting the implications settle over the chamber. "I'm proposing we take the war to them before they can fully establish their foothold in our reality. The Coalition has spent 3 years learning to survive against the Devourers. Now it's time to learn how to hunt the hunters." F what they were seeing. Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display, watching as energy signatures, unlike anything in Coalition databases, painted the sensors with new colors. Whatever had happened to the Endeavor during its 18 months in the dark, it had returned as something new, something that carried the promise of victory in its scarred hull and the threat of change in its wake. The Coalition had spent months mourning the loss of humanity's greatest weapon. They were about to discover they had been mourning the birth of something far more dangerous. As the Endeavor drew closer to the station, its transformed bulk casting shadows across the docking bays. One thing became clear to everyone watching. The war against the Devourers was about to enter a new phase, and this time, humanity wasn't fighting to defend. This time, they were coming to finish what the Devourers had started.